Hello and welcome to the AgCulture Podcast, where we share insights about the future of agriculture. Each week, we dive into the stories, technology, and ideas shaping a sustainable and profitable future for farms and rural communities alike. I'm Paul Windemuller, host of the AgCulture Podcast, and today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing Jamie Luce, who is a co-founder and CEO of AIR Parametric. Now, we're going to be talking about alternative types of insurance for farms. And before you turn this episode off, because you're probably like me, insurance is not the most exciting thing ever to talk about. But this is going to be a really interesting episode about a new product line based off of bringing together data and parametrics to come up with new insurance products and help farms mitigate risk that has not been possible in the past. So with that, enjoy the episode with Jamie Luce. All right, well, today on the AgCulture Podcast, we have the privilege of having Jamie Luce, who is co-founder and current CEO of AIR Parametric, a company that we're going to be talking a little bit about what you guys do, addressing an issue that's pretty large in the livestock industry, one that I deal with myself, being a dairy farmer, and that is the topic of heat stress and how to mitigate risk around heat stress. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting episode here. Looking forward to the discussion. So welcome to the show, Jamie. Yeah, so let's start out by explaining a little bit about the company AIR Parametric, what you guys do, and how you got into this realm of looking at heat stress and then trying to solve some issues around that.
Yeah, I'm excited to. AIR Parametric is an insurance managing general agent where we build and deliver to insurance agents and their customers certain types of products. And we work with insurance companies to get the risk-taking production support for them. We're building them with parametric solutions, which I'll talk a little bit about, but they're very new concepts that are becoming more valuable in the marketplace. And we're building them to solve new risk problems, particularly in the area of extreme weather and climate-related issues. So, my friends in the agriculture space clearly are dealing with weather. That's a pretty big, significant issue that they're worried about, and we're working on that within other industries as well. But it's a very new space. Being created across the world. There's a lot of new parametric types of products and ideas being conjured up, and our foray into agriculture is real exciting for us.
Yeah. So how did you decide to pick heat stress in cattle as your first foray into agriculture?
It's funny you ask that because I get asked that question by a lot of my insurance friends who know very little about agriculture and very much know that I don't either or didn't have growing up. So I'm a career insurance geek and really have always wanted insurance to do more and add more value, and got into the entrepreneurial side of the business with some friends who have very substantial agriculture backgrounds, and some who actually grew up in dairy farms, and some who actually run dairy farms, if you can believe it. And pretty quickly there was this union of, hey, parametric insurance could help solve and provide a new type of protection for dairy producers. And it didn't take me long to understand that there's a lot of dairy operations in the US as well as globally. And when I learned that they didn't have any risk protection for high heat and humidity events, and when I learned about the level of revenue and cost implications that has on a dairy farm, I got immediately involved, and we really built a whole business around levering the issue and trying to solve it for them.
Parametrics. Let's start with that word.
Sure.
What do you mean by parametrics? What are we looking at here?
So in a real, very basic sense, what we're talking about is paying an insurance policy, paying a predetermined amount to the farmer when a certain very specific index outcome happens. So this is something farmers are actually already using in a lot of cases with PRF and a couple of the other types of rainfall policies that are out there, where they pay when there's a lack of rainfall. They can get paid for a metric, like a lower level of rain. It gives them a payment. Ours is when it's hot and humid beyond a certain point, we pay X immediately. And that's really the very basics of it. It's very different than the way most other insurance products I've ever underwritten are, because most of those products have a limit with a bunch of coverages, and you have to sort of submit a claim and see how much of the loss is covered. Mm-hmm. I'm really, frankly, like the parametric space, because I never have to disappoint a customer with a claim result, because they know the contract says that we're going to pay here, and if they get to that result, we're going to pay Y when X index event happens.
Okay, so it really doesn't have anything to do with the farm's management. How they manage heat stress. No. It's all based on the dynamics of the weather or climate at that time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's actually one of the things that I'm most proud about the product is it's simple, and for a farmer to understand what they're buying and what they're getting is very clear. And I don't have to turn any farmer away for what they do or don't do. So basically, the farmer's operations have nothing to do with how much they pay. Really, the only thing that's at issue is how big a farm are they? How much production do they typically produce? Because we can only let them insure against a level of their actual production. But other than that, the location and their production is the only information we need to be able to put together something for them to look at and for them to bind.
What's the data that you're utilizing to create that metric to look at for each? Because you're doing it for each individual location, right? It's not a blanket policy that is the same for somebody in Iowa as it is in Maine.
That would probably not work very well for the people in Texas if we did that, right? Or I guess it would work great for the people.
Really good for them, maybe.
Yeah. No, so the way we do this is we use a data set that's provided by NOAA's counterpart in Europe, which is called the European Center for Medium Range Forecasting, and they do a tremendously great job of providing data at very discrete levels all across the globe. And they provide us that on the hourly basis, where we can look at hourly temperature and humidity of basically every 30 kilometers, as they would say, and roughly 15 miles for us. I have a data point, and wherever the farm is located, I place them and I monitor the location point that is closest to them. And so everything that they buy from us is built off the history of their location, and it's monitored in the exact same way for during the summer when we're actually providing the coverage to the farmer.
Now, what's a policy look like? How many dollars, I guess, are we talking, or what does this coverage look like?
So what we do when we evaluate a customer is like we said, we get the concept of how much revenue, how much production are they doing on a regular basis? What's their normal production level, number of cows, what's their pounds of milk that they're producing? And what we try to do is allow them to get the monetary value of about half of that as a maximum payout for any 1 week of the summer. So the product runs May to end of September. So essentially covers both ends of the late spring and into early fall, or roughly early fall. And what we would do is, if let's say you have $200,000 of weekly revenue, we would allow you to insure up to $100,000. You can insure less if you like. You don't have to insure the $100,000. And there are three triggering levels that are low, medium, and high. And if you pick a low trigger level, that means it's more likely to trigger. It costs a little bit more. And then you can buy lower premium options with higher triggers that just have a lower probability of occurring. And then you can also select from a 7-day event, where we only pay if there's the trigger is a 7-day heat event, versus a 5-day. You can choose a 5-day, or you can choose a 3-day, 3, 5, and 7-day. So those are all options we give you. And the reason why I say that is, on that $100,000 premium, and we can do our $100,000 limit, we can back that off to any number for any size farm. But just as a rough estimate, $100,000 farm can spend probably as little as like $3,500 for the highest 7-day only coverage, which is the least likely event to occur in their area, or they can pay excess of $25,000, $30,000 if they want to buy a low trigger for 3-day events and 5-day events and 7-day events. So we give the farmer quite a bit of opportunity to select a budget number that meets their budget and their own risk needs.
As farmers in the U.S., and we have a lot of European listeners as well, we're used to having some insurance programs or different programs that are subsidized, right? Is this one of those things that you've been working on in conjunction with the USDA or some of these other government entities that might get some cost sharing in the future, or is that not something that's really on the radar yet?
It's not on the radar for 2025. So we're operating in this market as a private product. So without subsidies, it is obviously going to always cost a little bit more. But in the future, it could. I mean, we're essentially, my partners and I have spent almost 2 years building this product and bringing it to market at our own expense, and maybe there'll be a big future for it with the government subsidizing it through RMA and the National Crop Insurance Services Organization, or perhaps it'll be a product that we provide and offer through different means. But we're not selling it through AIPs. We're selling it with independent agents, many of whom and can find in your local area.
Now, what's the name of this specific product?
Milkshake.
Milkshake. Okay. So pretty easy to remember.
My marketing team is going to be upset with me that I took forever to say milk. It's milkshake. Doggone it. It's milkshake.
Well, that's good to know. And I think that's kind of a catchy name. So I usually don't remember my insurance products that I buy, but I think if I ever ended up buying that one, I would remember that one.
I'm glad I didn't have any known. I didn't when I put that word into a business plan that I was developing a few years ago. I had no idea that it would be the brand and everybody would like it, because initially my friends were like, "That's not going to work. Nobody's going to like that."
But it's catchy. Right? That's what you want.
There you go. Let me, I'll tell you a little bit about how we do business. So the product is, like I said, runs May through end of September, 1st of October. It's available to be purchased now. We're quoting and binding programs now. And if there's an early binding window, which is open until the end of this month. And when I say that, what that means is if we quote something today, we will bind it up until May 1 for a May 1 effective date so that the coverage is in force all summer. If you wait till after May, if we will still offer programs, but if there's a heat event on its way, like in the 10 or 15-day outlook, we may not allow you to bind until after the heat event passes. Whereas if you bind before the end of April, we will absolutely bind, even if we think there's something coming in early May, which is unlikely in some spots, but frankly is becoming more and more relevant, unfortunately.
That brings up another point. As the climate seems to get more variable, and you see late heat events or early heat events or late frosts and early frosts, we've seen that as well across the U.S. How do you mitigate that? Because you're looking at all this data mostly from the past to look at heat events to figure out what's going to happen in the future. But as we all know, it's been changing. So how do you work that into your models and into your business?
So I think one of the things to start with is insurance is designed to be a buffer against that which is really not knowable, right? At the large level, we can have a confidence in the level of payouts that will occur over a certain period of time. But at the localized level, for a farmer like yourself or anybody, you don't know what's going to happen this summer. And frankly, in your location, I have an idea of what I think probabilities are, but I don't know what's going to happen. That's what the insurance is all about. So what I would say is we're using climate statistical analysis to understand what those risks are, but the risk will play out over time. So when we partner with our insurance companies, they don't expect that every customer is going to get paid every year or make money for them every year. It's more about building as broad a portfolio of stable outcomes, because there are going to be parts of the summer, parts of the country that are going to get really warm this summer, I guarantee it, and there are going to be payments made to those customers, and then there's others that won't. But next year it could be completely different, and it could be your farm or it could be your region of the country that gets hit. And so that's because nobody knows that. Essentially, even climatologists will tell you, outside a 10 or 15 day forecast, it's really hard to say what's going to happen in a localized area. And what we're doing is really taking a probabilistic understanding and saying, we'll take that risk on for the farmer to say, if you pay this, if it gets above this level, we're going to start paying dollars at you in a way that should help mitigate the expense to you.
And when does that payout occur? Is it 3 months after the fact, or is it pretty quick?
It's a little quicker than that. It's a lot quicker than 3 months. We get the data. The data is cleaned and qualified by the third party. So we work with that European governmental entity that they do a lot of quality check to make sure that what they publish to us is accurate. We get that about 6 days after the actual event. But once that occurs, what we then do is take that information, and if there's a triggering event, let's say, Paul, if you had a policy, we will monitor your location against the contract you bought. And if you have a triggering event, we will pre-fill a claim form, send it to your agent and you to look at. And all you have to do is acknowledge, yes, that heat event did cost me some component loss or some fluid milk loss, or you had to run your fans and your sprinklers longer. Whatever it is, we just check the box and sign it. We have to have that because you have to have an actual loss for me to pay you an insurance claim. But once that's sent to us, then we get to getting the checks issued. And the whole process is probably about 2 or 3 weeks when you really get down to it. But it's not months. It's designed to be, it'll be quicker in future when we have a little more technology. But for a little bit, it'll be a couple weeks. This would be considered
an alternative insurance type product, right? So they seem to be getting a little bit more popular. Why do you think that is? Is it because we have more access to data that's reliable than in the past, or what are the reasons that this is coming out now?
I think there are more and more people like myself and my partners, and there's others in the insurance space that are looking to develop more valuable risk-taking solutions for customers. And I'll say this as a seasoned long-term property casualty insurance person. We've built a lot of technology and data to help us manage profitability of our companies, but we haven't often used those data points and data technology items to create new coverages that people want or need. But there are more and more of us that are sort of spinning that capability to help us deliver something new. And I think the ease in which some of that data is available, frankly, the ECMWF's data suite is only something that's been really functionally valuable for somebody like me for maybe 5 or 10 years. So having the ability to get access to that data from a governmental source, be able to look at it and talk to farmers like yourself and say, I think I can build a product with this information if you're interested. Those are pretty new conversations in most respects. So I do think it's an alternative that, there's products. And as climate becomes more of a risk for all businesses, not just agriculture, I'm actually working on quite a few clients and different industry groups that have impacts from weather that are not insured today, where the same kind of thinking is creating new products, not milkshake, but another one. And I think you'll see more of that, particularly as the impacts of weather have greater and greater impacts on businesses and people, which you're seeing in the news more and more.
So you're focusing more on developing products specifically for climate risk, not necessarily specific to industry or a sector.
Correct. Exactly. We've built its parametric product suite with extreme weather as the peril, as the thing that we're trying to help protect against. There are parametrics that do all sorts of things in the marketplace, but we're really very much, it's our mission to help the businesses deal with the extreme weather events.
Now, do you see any other opportunities inside of ag associated with this outside of just heat stress on dairy farms?
I'm learning more about different avenues. I think that heat has implications for a lot of different types of growing situations, heat or lack of heat, depending on the situation. So early frosts or late frosts, I should say, in certain places really hurt pollination or, hurt germination of certain products, certain fancy fruits. I think parametrics can maybe help in that area where the majority of the risk-taking capacity that the farm, the current multi-peril products are going to isn't helping. So some of those smaller fruit items, I've talked to a lot of folks in Michigan about cherries and about different types of like almonds and other products where the solution may not always fit for them. Laser focused parametric risk taking may be able to help.
So this is the first year that you're offering this product, the milkshake product, correct?
And we actually wrote a few policies last year because we built our product with a group of like 10 or 15 farmers that gave us a lot of information, gave us a lot of feedback on ideas. I mean, we didn't just wake up with milkshake as I've articulated it. It really has gone through a process. And so at the end of the spring, when we got the underwriting capacity to actually put it in market, we sold a few last year. So this is the first really broad awareness, and the marketing effort has really, ticked up quite a bit. So yeah, it feels like our first season, but we did actually write a few policies last year.
Well, what was some of the feedback that you got from farmers from your initial foray into it?
I think really like two or three things that we learned. One was our product last year only covered a 7-day heat event, which kept the prices low, but also was a more remote type of an event. So one of the thoughts and what I heard from farmers is, yeah, but I actually have 3-day events and 5-day events that actually hurt my production. Can you give me coverage for that? So yes, that's what we've created in the 3 and the 5-day model. And then the other thing we learned last year was we had a lot of triggering selection opportunities. We told them you can pick from this number down to this number. And what we found was it got more confusing because we just created too many choices. So when we changed our structure, we went low, medium, high. And it's much easier to sell and talk about. And I think that conceptually, the customers get their minds wrapped around it a lot easier. Sometimes they don't understand why the triggers don't seem to be spread evenly between low, medium, and high. And that has everything to do with the way our model and our interpretation of their location and what the probabilities are. But generally speaking, having low, medium, and high triggers as 3 distinct options was a good route, and directly comes from feedback from farmers last year.
Is there anything else, Jamie, that you think we should cover?
I think the other thing is we built milkshake for dairy, but we're having a lot of conversations with cattle feeders. And I haven't spent any real time yet with folks in the swine world or in the poultry world, but I'm aware that a lot of our livestock farming, producers have a similar type of risk for it. And whether you're one of those folks or maybe somebody who's in a farming industry that is concerned about their ability to get access to types of insurance that Parametric can maybe help out at, I'm more than happy to take their call and see if we can help them.
Great. Well, I find this really fascinating, some of these new ways of protecting farms in the future and having options like this that a farmer can say, hey, I want to mitigate this risk. And now we have the data and the ability to collect that data and put it to use in a way that we can manage risk more effectively. So I'm fascinated by it. I'm interested to see where this goes and what other type of things you roll out in the future.
I appreciate it. Maybe one other thing I'll throw out that you pick my brain a little bit. A lot of people have asked me about DRP and how does this relate to DRP? And what I tell them is, your DRP is doing a nice job of helping you with market price fluctuations. But one thing that the farmers who buy milkshake from us have told us, and there's actually a nice testimonial on our site that where John Vandepol, who runs a dairy down in Texas, talked about it. And he said, I buy a lot of protection for the price point, but then if I have a really bad summer heat, I've actually overspent quite a bit to protect price because now I've nothing to bring or a lot less to bring to market. So I often tell people, if you think it's really important to protect the price point of the milk and give yourself a revenue floor for the actual pounds you bring, you might want to think about protecting the pounds you bring. because
Right.
there's a yin and a yang there, but they work very nicely together. And we talk about that on the milkshakeins.com website.
Okay. And that's where people can go to find out more about Milkshake itself.
Yep. milkshakeins.com.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today, Jamie. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing where you go from here.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the AgCulture Podcast. Hope you enjoyed today's episode with Jamie Luce. And as always, if you did, please share it with somebody that you know, especially if this is something that would be beneficial for their farm, this product type, or maybe you send it to your insurance agent and say, hey, why don't you come up with some new ideas and new products for us in our farm? Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you know how excited I get about data and all the things that we can do with it. And I think this is a great case in point that we have a lot more opportunities at our fingertips in agriculture because of the data that we can collect and look at and analyze today that we couldn't 10 or 20 years ago. So this really highlights that, and I just hope that it opens your mind to think about other ways that you can change management or change how you mitigate risk on your operation or in your life. So until next week, I'm Paul Windemaller. Thanks again so much for listening to this episode of the AgCulture Podcast. We'll see you next week.